We are on Daf Nun Beis Amud Beis 53b, and the Gemara that we learned spoke about the law of reciting the bracha on fire. How does the fire? Do you have to actually benefit from the fire, or at least be close to it, or could you even be far away from it? And we had different opinions. We had Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav that said you have to benefit. It doesn't really mean benefit. It means that if you would be close by, then you would be able to benefit from it. But really, you could say the bracha even richok makoim. Then we had the Gemara had asked a question on that. It seemed to imply that if you're far away from the fire, you're not allowed to recite the bracha. The Gemara answered that no, that's not the case that's talking about over there. It's talking about that the fire is on its way out. And that was the case where it's a problem to recite a bracha because it's not really a fire of that's going to give you much benefit, and the coal is on its way out. And therefore, that would be a case you can't say a bracha. But if you're far away from the fire, but the fire is a good fire, then you would be able to say a bracha according to Yehuda Amar Rav. Now, the Gemara then says that what would be a case where the flame is a flame that you could say a bracha? And what's a case where it's considered that it's going out and you can't say a bracha? It's going out. To what extent? So the Gemara gives a precise way of figuring out what is considered flaming fire and what isn't. And the Gemara says, if you would stick a chip of wood and it would light up, that's considered a flaming fire. So the place where you draw the line is if a splinter or a toothpick would light up, that would be a strong enough fire. If you would need to blow on it in order to ignite it more, in order to get the chip of wood to light on fire, then that would not be considered a flaming fire. You couldn't say a bracha on it. Now, this statement that it depends if you would be able to ignite something from it or not, one of the commentaries wants to bring a proof from this statement as to the fact that you don't actually need to benefit from the light, because you see here, what's the main thing? That you could, it's considered a fire enough if you would stick a chip of wood there and it would ignite. Do you need to stick the chip of wood there? No. If you would stick a chip of wood there, it would ignite. But you're not sticking a chip of wood. It doesn't say that you have to stick a chip of wood. It means you have to imagine and estimate if you were to have stuck a chip of wood, would it ignite? Then it's a good enough fire. So what you see from there is that it doesn't necessarily, you don't really have to benefit from the light. You have to be able to benefit from the light. It has to be strong enough that you could theoretically have you could benefit from the light. So that's one of the proofs that they give. Again, there is an argument about this. Do you actually have to benefit, or is it enough to just be nearby? And this Gemara is used by one of those opinions as to the fact that you're not actually igniting it. It's telling you if you were to put a piece of wood there, would it ignite? Yes, Robert.
I guess the question for me is: let's say that you have embers and they're glowing, but there's no flame, but you do stick a splinter or something in it, and it becomes a light. Is that satisfactory or not?
Oh, well, first of all, you don't even need to.
Okay.
if they would ignite,
If they had the potential in your
if it
eyes
has the
of doing
potential, the
it.
Gemara says
Okay.
that's good enough.
Okay,
But the
good.
problem
All right.
is if it doesn't. Problem is
Yeah,
if it's not strong enough, you have to blow on it. But if
Okay.
you do blow on it, then it's fine because you
Okay.
actually ignited it.
Okay, I
But the
got
way
it.
it is without the blowing on it, it would not be fine.
Okay. You help it along. I got it. Thanks.
So then the Gemara mentions Rava's opinion. Rava says you have to actually be close to it or benefit from it. And the Gemara says, what is how close do you have to be? It says you should be able to recognize between two types of coins, or another opinion is should be able to recognize two types of weights. The weight of a certain weight in Tiveria and a certain weight that they used to use in Sipori. Now, then the Gemara mentioned stories of rabbis. Rabbi Yehuda would go to this person's house, and Rava went to that person's house. Abaye went to another person's house in order to recite the bracha on Motzei Shabbos on fire. And now I shouldn't say he went to their house. He looked at the fire that was in their house. He used the fire that was in their house, and that was what they relied on. One of them relied on a fire that was far away. The other one relied on a fire that was very close to him. But either way, the point is they didn't have their own fire. They looked to the house that was. He would recite the bracha on a fire of someone else's fire in their house. I tried to look up Ezra about your question regarding the looking into someone else's house. No one seems to talk about it, so I assume they probably got permission that otherwise they shouldn't be looking into other people's property. Yes, Moshe.
Okay, this may sound a little bit known, but what about a five-alarm? Let's say, what about a five-alarm fire? Let's say there's a building on fire nearby, and somebody wants to say a bracha. I mean, and they see it's within visibility. I mean, if there's lives in that building that could be endangered, could a person actually say a bracha over a building?
No, because that fire is not meant to give light. That's meant for terrorism, or it was ignited by mistake or whatever. Who knows who started it? But it has to be a flame that's meant to give light.
I see. Okay.
So the Gemara then continued and said a very interesting point, that you don't have to run after getting fire. If you have a fire for a mitzvah, you use it for Havdalah, but you don't have to make yourself crazy to be able to get a fire for the bracha of the fire. So I mentioned that one of the commentaries says this applies to Shabbos, but doesn't apply to Yom Kippur. And because the reason of doing the fire Motzei Shabbos is different than the reason why we do a fire on Motzei Yom Kippur. On Motzei Yom Kippur, it has to do with the fact that on Yom Kippur, Yom Kippur is different than any of the other holidays. All the other holidays you're allowed to spread fire. Yom Kippur prohibited from spreading fire, and Yom Kippur is more similar to Shabbos, and therefore we make a recognition. We make a display that Yom Kippur is unique, and that's why we have a fire that rested on Yom Kippur, and only after Yom Kippur are we finally allowed to actually use a fire, and so therefore the fire of Yom Kippur is more emphasizing the Havdalah. Connected more to the Havdalah of Yom Kippur, and therefore it would be a mitzvah to include a fire in the Havdalah. However, on a Saturday night, where the fire is not, it's not really connected to the prohibition of Shabbos, and it's more connected to the fact that creation of light. It's more of a birchas hashevach. It's a blessing of praise to Hashem. So it's not so much of a mitzvah bracha as it is a bracha of praising Hashem, just like we praise Hashem when there is thunder and lightning and so on. Other, we have different brachas that are meant for praising Hashem. So the bracha on the the bracha that would recite on fire is not a bracha that's an obligation, a mitzvah bracha. It's not a bracha that you're benefiting from, so you need to recite a bracha before you benefit. It's a bracha of shevach, of praise, and therefore it would not be something that you have to run after. It's almost like if you know that it's thundering and lightning a few blocks away from you, or the city next door to nearby. Are you obligated to go and be a storm chaser and run there to say the bracha on the thunder and the lightning? No, right? You don't have to run there to say the bracha on the thunder and the lightning. If it's thundering and lightning and you hear it, you say the bracha, and you see it, you say the bracha. But if there is a thunder and lightning, you don't have to run to go to it. I mean, I know there are people who love they chase different storms, and the regular person is not obligated to go to chase to run after a storm to be able to say the bracha of the thunder and the lightning. But here, so with regard to Yom Kippur might be different because Yom Kippur is connected to, at least according to one of the commentaries mentions this, that Yom Kippur is more connected to the mitzvah of not doing malacha and doing malacha, and therefore it would be more of a mitzvah for the bracha on the night after Yom Kippur.
Rebbe, they chase tornadoes.
Okay.
And the eye of a hurricane. They like to find the eye of a hurricane.
Well, I'm sure there must be some people who like the lightning. Lightning is a very intriguing. There must be some people that do that.
When we first moved to Florida, we sat by our window looking west. We had a view looking west every night. We never turned on the TV. We just watched the lightning storms. It was beautiful.
Definitely a kosher view, nothing, especially when it's pouring rain, lightning. You don't have any issues.
No, we're sitting here, but it's all the way out west. You'd watch the storms miles away.
Wow. Okay, so the Gemara here that we're going to begin, it talks about the argument in the Mishnah between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel as to the bracha that one recites after one eats. So if we look back in the Mishnah had mentioned that mentioned 8 arguments between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, and the 7th argument was if a person ate and forgot to bench, he forgot to say the grace after meal. So Beis Shammai says you got to go back and recite the bracha, and Beis Hillel says you can recite the bracha where you remember. So that was the Mishnah. Now the Gemara brings this statement from the Mishnah. Misha achal b'chulu. So we are maybe about 25 lines from the top of the page, 23 lines, something like that, from the top of the page. So it says Misha achal b'chulu. person who ate and he forgot to bench, you have that argument between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Now, Amar Rav Zvid v'itema Rav Dimi bar Abba. Rav Zvid says, and some say Rav Dimi bar Abba says, Machloikis b'shachach. The argument between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel is where a person forgot to recite the grace after meal. Abel b'mezid, but if a person purposely did not say the bracha after he ate, divrei hakoil yachzor l'mkoimai v'yavorech. Everyone agrees that you have to go back and recite the bracha where you ate. Now, the Gemara says, Pshita, I need Rav Zvid or Rav Dimi bar Abba to tell me this. What about the wording in the Mishnah? The Mishnah's wording says shachach. It says he forgot. So how could the Gemara tell us, oh, these commentaries on the Mishnah, they're telling you, by the way, I want you to know that the argument between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel is where a person forgot. But if he purposely didn't bench in the place where he ate, you know what? He's got to go back. You got to go back and bench it. Everyone agrees. Of course, everyone agrees there. The Mishnah clearly says it's shachach. Pshita, the Gemara asks. Pshita, this is obvious. V'shachach tanan. The Mishnah says the word v'shachach. So we know that even the lenient Beis Hillel that says you don't have to go back, it's only in case you forgot. But if you didn't forget, then for sure you have to go back. So the Gemara answers, Mahu detema. You may have said, or you may have thought to say, Hu hadin afilu b'mezid, the same law would apply even if a person intentionally did not bench in the place where he ate. V'hai diktani v'shachach, and the fact that the Mishnah gives a case where a person forgot, l'haidiach ha'koichan d'Beis Shammai, to show the strictness, the strength of Beis Shammai, that they're so strict that even in a case where a person forgot, they obligate him to go back. And maybe the argument would apply even in the case of b'mezid, where a person intentionally did not say the bracha where they ate. And even in that case, maybe Beis Hillel allows you to just say the grace after meal wherever you find yourself. And on this, the Gemara tells us that not the Gemara, Rav Zvid or Rav Dimi bar Abba, they tell us, by the way, I want to make it clear. No, they only argue in a case of shachach, but in a case of mezid, even Beis Hillel agrees to Beis Shammai that you have to go back. Everyone agrees you got to go back to where you ate. The reason for this is that it's a knas. It would be a penalty on a person for not benching right away where they ate, and you left. So there would be a penalty that you would need to go back and recite the grace after meal where you ate. This does happen all the time. You know, you eat you're eating somewhere, you're in a rush, you got a phone call, you take off, and then you remember, oh, I didn't bench. It happens all the time. And so you have two issues that you have to deal with. Number one, do you have to go back to where you are? Number two, is it too late to bench? And these are two issues that our Gemara is going to deal with. So the first issue that our Gemara just finalized was a case where you did not forget. You got a phone call, you forgot, you ran out of there. That's a case of shachach. So that would be a case of an argument between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. What about the case where you decide intentionally, I am not benching here, I am going to go, I'll bench later. So you intentionally leave. Your friends are leaving. You want to leave with them. So you figure, I'll bench on the way. I'll bench somewhere else. So you intentionally leave, even though you're supposed to bench where you ate. So that would be a case of mazid. Now, if it's a dangerous, you're going because they're walking in a dangerous area and you need to, you're going to be stuck. It's going to be dangerous for you to go yourself. So they're leaving now. So that might be a room for leniency, or definitely is a room for leniency, because you're going to be stuck later going in a dangerous place. You need to leave with them. But here we're talking about you intentionally, don't bench here, and you leave the place where you ate. In this case, the Gemara says everyone agrees to Beis Shammai that no one argues. Even Beis Hillel holds that you have to bench where you have to return. You left on purpose. You got to return to where you ate to bench. Now, I should mention that there's 3 opinions in the commentaries what we're talking about. Either we're talking about a bread meal, or we're talking about, in addition to bread, we're talking about mizainos meal or snack, some type of a cake or pasta or something like that, where you say a bracha al hamichya, and as well as bread. Or we're talking about bread al hamichya and al haperos. If you had wine or fruits that are from the 7 species, this is also possible that you would need to go back. So there's 3 opinions as to what is included in this law of returning to where you ate and reciting the bracha where you ate. The Gemara continues and tells us a little explanation, a little discussion, a dialogue between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. So the Gemara says that Tanya, we learned in a brisa. Amar lahem Beis Hillel Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel told Beis Shammai l'devreichem, according to you, that you need to go back to where you ate. Misha achal b'reish habira v'shachach. If a person ate on the top of a tower, and he forgot v'shachach v'yarad v'lei beirach, and he came all the way down, and he didn't bench. Now he remembered he's got a bench. Yachzer l'reish habira v'yavarech. Does he need to go back to the top of the tower to bench? Doesn't seem that the rabbis would have obligated you to do that. Now, if that's true, if the rabbis didn't obligate you to do that, that means that the rabbis would not obligate you in general, even if it's an easy place to go back. In other words, the rabbis aren't going to differentiate between now you have to go back there, you don't have to go back. If the rabbis wouldn't have obligated you to go back to the top of a tower, then they're not going to obligate you to go down the road either, or to go next door. It doesn't seem that the rabbis would obligate you to do that, to go all the. So what did Beis Shammai answer back? Amar lahen Beis Shammai. Beis Shammai answers back, the devreichem, according to you, misha shachach arnaki, if a person forgot their wallet, b'reish habira, on the top of a tower, lo ya'ala v'yitlena, he's not going to go back to take it. L'chvayid atzmai hu oila, for his own honor, he would go up to the top of the tower to get his wallet. L'chvayid shamayim lekolshkein, to honor Hashem. How much more so you should bother yourself to go up. then for sure it makes sense that the rabbis would have obligated someone to go and bench where they ate. So that is the claim of Beis Shammai back to Beis Hillel. So Beis Hillel thought they had some logic, and Beis Shammai they argued back and said, "What type of logic is that? Of course you have to go back. If you would go back for your own wallet, for sure you should go back to praise Hashem." Yes, Ben.
I thought Bira is a capital town. It's like Yerushalayim is Israel's Bira. So, and they also say, when you go to Yerushalayim, they say, Olele Yerushalayim. You go up to Jerusalem. So maybe they mean here, if you were in Jerusalem and you forgot, I don't know.
So
Rabbi, the Sefaria says that he must return to the top of the Temple Mount.
Which is in Jerusalem.
So that's
the way I translated it is it's a Rashi somewhere else that translates the Bira to be the Migdal. They bring it from Rashi in Tainus, tractate Tainus. So that's interesting how that there is another interpretation. I guess let's translate it that way also. They must have, do they have a source?
No, this is just the way they translate it.
Bira is considered the capital.
Okay, so it means Yerushalayim.
Yeah.
So
it wouldn't be a big deal to go up on a tower. Let's say even how tall was a tower in those days? So they wouldn't make a big deal about it. But going back to Jerusalem for it, that's a big deal.
Okay, all right.
Rabbi, the Steinsaltz basically said Misha Achal Berosh Bira, and he puts in the words Behar Habayit, V'shachach levarech, v'yered v'lo birech, etc. So he's making the translation that appears in the Sefaria. Or the Sefaria is making the translation based on such.
Yeah, probably it took it from him. Okay, fine. So we'll translate it that way. No problem. The capital, the Har HaBayis, and the Beis Hillel says someone ate on Har HaBayis. Actually, what does the Art Scroll say? Robert, you have the Art Scroll. Does the Art Scroll also translate it that way?
But Rabbi, it makes also sense because so many people sometimes had to go up to Jerusalem, and some of them would forget.
Yeah, I don't see any reference.
Or didn't have the time to do it, and they start. The rest of the people started walking back. They start walking back, and
No, it just gives a general refrain that agreed that he does have to return. It doesn't say anything more specific than that.
Well, no, but there is a statement in the Hebrew where it says Rosh Habira, the top of the Bira.
Okay.
How does it translate it? It says Tanya. We learned in a brisa, probably a new paragraph. Tanya Amru Lahem Beis Hillel Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel told Beis Shammai. We learned in a brisa. Yeah.
Well, it says something about, again, I may be reading the wrong, but must return to the top of the mansion.
The mansion.
And recite Birchat Hamazon.
Now, what does they have a note on that on the mansion?
No, I don't see a note.
Okay.
well, the highest point in Jerusalem is Har HaBayit.
Har HaBayis.
That's why they're talking about that. You know.
Right. Okay. Anyway, we could translate it that way as well. No problem. I don't know what the source is. But the way I translate it is based on a Rashi somewhere else. But if it means if you want to translate it as Har HaBayis, So a person who ate on Harabayas and he forgot, and went down and didn't recite the bracha, he forgot to recite the bracha, does he have to go all the way back and recite the bracha? Maybe he's talking about he was eating karbanos. He was eating sacrifices, maybe.
Even worse.
No, I mean, it was allowed to, the owner is allowed to eat some of the
Yes,
meat,
but it's worse that he didn't bless.
Right, he didn't. So you're going to make him go back? And Beis Shammai says if the person forgot their arniki, their wallet on the Reish Habira, are they not going to go back and take it?
Now, I'm curious why they would use the word mansion. Does that have greater significance in what they're looking to be, whatever it would be? I mean, because mansion has some.
No, they're just translating.
Okay.
It just means like a bira could mean a mansion. It could mean like a tower or a mansion.
Yeah, well,
they're just translating that word that way, even though there are other translations.
Right, but it's not specific. Okay.
Rabbi, could it be that when ArtScroll was making the translation, they were sort of stuck because if you actually mean Harabayit, the question is, does it only apply there or does it apply everywhere?
It's just a dialogue. It's not.
I think they're giving you the worst example. The worst thing would be if you left Jerusalem and you have to go back all the way to Har HaBayit in Jerusalem.
I have a little problem with translating it as Harabayas. My problem is that there is a statement that says that you're not allowed to go onto Harabayas with your it says leather shoes, a walking stick, and a purse. So my question is, what is Beis Shammai's example?
I think his example shows that if it's important to you, your money.
I know, but how can he say such an example?
He says if you left your wallet, you'll go back. Then you should go back for the blessing too.
But how could you have a wallet on Harabayas?
I don't know.
A little question.
Rabbi, it's like the Rambam. The Rambam in two different places will say something, and then somewhere else he'll say something, and you say, but these two contradict each other. And I mean, the only way that I can reconcile them is one, he's talking in generalities, and the second one, he talks in specifics. And I think in this particular case, it's the same thing with Beit Shammai. He's saying, even for something mundane, you would go back up to get it. Mundane but important to you, you'd have to go back and get it. So for something which is even, has several levels that are way above the mundane, wouldn't you go back to take care of that?
Yeah.
So you want to give an example from the Rambam that sometimes you find contradictions in the Rambam. So that means that it's not a problem, but I'm not sure what you mean. So,
people will always say, well, the Rambam says this in one place and says that in the other place.
Right.
And it says, how can you then reconcile it? I would say that in general, the Rambam in one place will talk about generalities without being specific. In the places where it has to be specific, he tends to be specific, and the two are not contradictory. And here, I think the same thing is true with your example, saying, how is it possible that Beit Shammai would forget that you're not allowed to carry a stick and your shoes and your wallet and go to Har HaBayit? And I'm saying, we're talking. You're talking about specifics, and he's talking about generalities. Saying,
but Okay, I hear you. I hear you. Thank you, Ezra. Yeah, very
Rabbi?
well understood, well taken. But I would
Rabbi.
say that if you don't want to talk about specifics, then you don't have to translate Brosh Habira to have to be Harabayas. Just be in general, a top of a bira, somewhere high up. You know what I mean? Like, why would they translate it to be Harabayas? Let's just talk about in general. You think the rabbis obligated you to go to the top of Masada, some big high place, Everest, the top of Mount Everest, right? In other words, I don't know if you need to, pick a point where it says Reish Habira. It doesn't say Harabayas, but that I'm just wondering if that might be a reason why they didn't want to translate it that way. The art scroll, and maybe.
Yeah, but
I'm just throwing a thought. In other
all right,
words,
so
it would be nice to fit that. We don't like to have contradictions. I'm not saying that it would be a major contradiction. But it would be considered a contradiction if it clearly says this and it's not allowed. So it definitely would be. This would be a contradiction. It's not like some places where it leaves it vague, and you could say, "Oh, the Rambam here is vague," and there the Rambam specifies.
Oh,
You know what I
Rabbi, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I see in the dictionary.
Yeah.
That bira is
Could mean a capital. Shushan Habira.
Yeah, but capital, citadel, or fortress.
Right. Okay.
So there's different
translation
that can be called bira. I just know it as a capital. I don't know.
yeah.
Right. Anyway, I'm just throwing a thought that maybe that's why that could be questionable about the Harabayas, to translate it Harabayas.
Well, there were some words which I forgot to tell you out of the Sepharia. It says one who ate atop. Okay, this is all in bold capital letters. One who ate atop the Temple Mount. Those words are written not in capital letters, but then they continue saying God's chosen place of residence, which are in bold letters. So even if you were to remove the Temple Mount, they're trying to say one who ate atop God's chosen place of residence. That's how they translate, Berosh Habira.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I guess my proof is not a huge proof because, well, anyway, it is a little question. Okay. In any event, there may be two ways of translating it, but the point is that Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel had a dialogue over here, and Beis Hillel doesn't think that the rabbis would have bothered someone to go out of their way, so much out of their way to have to bench when they, it was done by mistake. They're going to have to go all the way back. And Beis Shammai is saying, of course they would have to go back. You do it for your wallet. Of course you should do it for Hashem. So that's the argument that they made. Now, the Gemara continues and tells us a story. Hanu trei talmidei. There were two students. Chad Ovid b'shoygig k'Beis Shammai. One of these students acted like Beis Shammai. In a case of shoygig, he made a mistake. He left the place by mistake, and he followed Beis Shammai, and he went back to bench where he ate. V'yashkach arnaka dedahava. Guess what happened? He found a gold purse, a purse full of gold coins. Or no, I guess a gold purse. Arnica dedahava, a gold purse. So you see from there that that it seems to be a very positive thing to return to where you ate in order to bench. And what's really interesting is that he merited the example that Beis Shammai said. Think about that. Beis Shammai's example was about a purse. That was their claim. You have to go back because imagine a purse. So when Beis Shammai said those words, it actually had an impact. It had an effect. Like a tzaddik geyser, Maharsha says this. Tzaddik geyser, HaKadosh Baruch Hu makayim. Hashem made it happen when the person followed his words, Beis Shammai's word, he actually got a purse, a golden purse. Now, v'chad avid b'mezid kebeis Hillel, and one student did something that he shouldn't have. He followed Beis Hillel in a case of mezid. Mezid means he intentionally left the place. He knew he didn't bench. He left the place where he ate. And now what he should do is really go back and bench. But he didn't. He acted like Beis Hillel and he benched where he went to. So he acted b'mezid in a case of mezid, in a case of intentional leaving his place from, instead of doing grace there, he left. And he acted like Beis Hillel, who says that you don't have to return to your place. Now, Beis Hillel spoke about a shoygeg case. He followed Beis Hillel in a case of mezid. And then it says what happened to him, v'achle arya, and a lion ate him. So the Gemara gives these two examples of either following Beis Shammai or following Beis Hillel. Now, the question really is, we did have a Mishnah way, way back that says that you're not supposed to follow Beis Shammai. And to the extent that if a person follows Beis Shammai, they may be a deservant of a capital punishment, because Beis Shammai is not the halacha. And this was in a case where a person wanted to lie down to say the Shema at night. V'hitesi likrois, I leaned, in order to say the Shema, according to Divrei Beis Shammai, like the words of Beis Shammai. If you remember, many, I'm thinking on page 11, maybe. So it's way back in the beginning of Brochos. We're at page 53 now, but maybe about 40-something pages earlier, we had studied this, and it was a Mishnah there where it says that Reb Tarfon said, "V'sikanti biatzmi," I put myself in a big danger. It was very dangerous because I wanted to follow. I tried to follow Beis Shammai. Now the question is, then the Mishnah concludes and says you deserved to be in danger, that you might have something bad could have happened to you, because why did you do that? You shouldn't have followed Beis Shammai. You're supposed to follow the halacha. It's very nice that you know of Beis Shammai and you want to be extra careful, extra stringent, but that's not the halacha, and you should not be following that view when the halacha has been determined that view is not accepted in halacha. In other words, we say Shema at the time of going to sleep, but not in a way of leaning. That's not our opinion. That our understanding of the pasuk uveshachbecha uvekumecha means at the time when people go to sleep. It doesn't mean when you're lying down you should say the Shema. So we don't paskin like Beis Shammai. And over there it says that he did a terrible thing. Our Gemara makes it sound like he deserves a some type of a prize for he deserves some prize for following this view of Beis Shammai. He forgot to bench where he benched, so he went back to where he ate. It's surprising that he should be able to get a prize for following Beis Shammai. Now, one of the commentaries, one of the Go'inim says, you see from here that the halacha in this argument, we do follow Beis Shammai, it must be. You're actually supposed to follow Beis Shammai here. Here the halacha follows Beis Shammai. Now, that's one view. The Ritva says that there's a difference. The difference is when you lie down to say the Shema, it's very clear that you're following Beis Shammai. But if you were to go back to where you ate and bench there, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're following Beis Shammai. It's not so clear that you're following Beis Shammai. Could be you forgot something there, just like you forgot to bench. You might have forgotten your wallet there. Who knows? And therefore, it's not a problem to follow Beis Shammai in such a scenario. But if you're standing and walking, and all of a sudden you lie down, say Shema, and leave, it's very clear that you're lying down for the Shema. So that is so that's the way the Ritva explains it. And then the Rabbeinu Yoina has another way of explaining it, and he says that really Beis Hillel agrees to Beis Shammai that it's better to do it this way. This is not a typical argument between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. The typical argument of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel is where Beis Hillel says this is appropriate, Beis Shammai says that's appropriate, and this is totally unnecessary, and that is, or this is what's necessary, and that is the typical argument Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel. In the case of Shema, Beis Hillel says it's totally no reason to lie down when you're saying the Shema. It says b'shachtecha uvekumecha. It means at a time of going to sleep. It does not mean when you're in a position of lying down. That's not what it means. It's wrong. So Beis Hillel is very clear that they disagree on what Beis Shammai says. Here, this is a very interesting point. Beis Yoina says Beis Hillel is saying it's best to follow Beis Shammai, but you know what? You don't have to. So they're really agreeing with Beis Shammai, and they're just saying that, you know what, the rabbis didn't obligate a person to do that, but you know it's better, it's more honorable to more honor to Hashem to go back and bench where you ate and so on. And how do we see this? We see this from the fact that what happens if a person intentionally left? If a person intentionally left where they ate, what does Beis Hillel say? You got to go back, right? Now you got to go back.
Rabbi?
So if you have to go back in a case of intentional, we see that Beis Hillel is really leaning towards going back. Just they said, you made a mistake. We don't bother you to go back. And therefore, in this scenario, if you follow Beis Shammai, it's not considered that you transgress Beis Hillel. So these are the three ways of learning. Now, I will tell you that there is a little problem. The Tosfos earlier had a little problem. He had an issue. The issue was that there was a Gemara we had on page 52b, and over there it said that in our entire chapter, the halacha follows Beis Hillel, except in a case of sweeping before the Mayim Achronim. Now, the problem that Tosfos had was that we see in our Gemara, people followed Beis Shammai. Rabbis followed Beis Shammai. But the Gemara earlier said in our entire chapter, the halacha follows Beis Hillel, except in one case. Except in the case of the crumbs and the sweeping, that law that with regard to Mayim Achreinim, the water that we use before we bench, regarding that case, we said there, we don't follow we don't pass like Beis Hillel, we follow Beis Shammai. The Gemara said that. But in general, in the entire chapter, we follow Beis Hillel. Now, Tosfos is bothered. What about these stories over here? You have a story right here where this student followed Beis Shammai, even got a reward, so to speak. He got some. He got a medal, and now we have another story as well. I'm going to read the other. Now, so what does Tosfos answer? So Tosfos answers that it's in that case, even Beis Hillel agrees to Beis Shammai, just they didn't bother you to have to go back. So this Tosfos is saying the same point as Rabbeinu Yoina, but he brings it out with asking this contradiction, and he answers it with this point that we see in Rabbeinu Yoina as well, that Beis Hillel did not fully argue with Beis Shammai. They just said you don't have to go back in a case of shoygig, in a case of mistake, but it's better to go back. They didn't bother you to go back. Yes, Moshe.
Okay, for example, let's say in today's society now, where you have like I'm originally from Chicago. Let's say you're in the John Hancock Center. You eat at the top of the building, and you come down, and the elevator takes you down, and it's a tremendous amount of effort to get back up again. But they have a video of the area which the people ate from below. Now, is that considered eating in the same place? If that camera, if you can actually see the video, the area on a television where you ate, would that be considered being yotzi on the mitzvah?
Isaac seems to want to say something.
The food, if you can taste the food over the video, I would say yes.
But would Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai, would they agree that is that'd be satisfactory? I mean, I'm just
I doubt it. It's an interesting question, and it's a question of in today's day of technology. The question is there would anything change because of the technology? But my understanding is it wouldn't help. Okay, Moshe,
okay.
But we'll keep our eyes open to see if we find any leniency.
No, I was just curious. So,
what did you say, Ben?
That restaurant is not kosher.
No, I'm saying an eating area that's not in a restaurant, in an eating area, which is like an open area.
Okay, let's continue with the next story. Rabbi Bar Barchana have a causal b'shayarto. Rabbi Bar Barchana was going with a group, with a caravan. Ochal, he ate. They stopped to eat, so he ate. They stopped to to take a bite. V'ishtali v'loy barich, and he forgot, and he did not recite the grace after meal. He didn't say the bracha. Now he's in a big problem now because they're about to leave, and if he starts benching now, and he's in the middle of the desert, who knows what he might, if he doesn't have the caravan to travel with, it could be very dangerous. So Amar Hechi Avid, what should I do? Yes.
In this case, they've already left because of what he says next.
Yeah, okay, you're right. They started going. Okay, fine, thank you. Amar Hechi Avid. So he said to himself, what should I do that they will agree to let me stop, to stop and let me bench? If I tell them I forgot to bench, they would say to me, bench over here or brich while we're traveling, right? Wherever you bench is good enough, and they're not going to agree to wait for me. Mutav the aminalahu. So it's better if I tell them insha yoina de dahava. I forgot my golden dove, and this way they'll feel bad because it sounds like something very precious, and they'll wait for me. Amar lahu, intruly. So he did that. He said, "Wait for me." The insha yoina de dahava, because I forgot my golden dove. Ozil ubarich, he went and he said the berachas hamazai. He said the grace after meal, and in that merit, the ashkach yoina de dahava he found a golden dove. When he came back, it looked like he said the truth, because he actually found this golden dove. Everyone, so he was able to show people, thanks for letting me go back. I got it. So the question is, was he allowed to lie? He sort of said something that wasn't true. He said, I forgot my golden dove. Now, he didn't own a golden dove. He did not forget a golden dove. And a miracle happened that he got one. But how was he allowed to lie? So one understanding is that in order to fulfill the mitzvah properly, he had no other choice. So there are scenarios where a person would be allowed to say something that's not true, and this could be considered one of those. Yes, Ezra.
Why would you not say that the caravan is being run by non-Jews?
You still can't lie to a non. You're still not allowed to say a lie. Not appropriate to lie.
I mean, their attitude towards the blessing is, God is everywhere. You can say it. You can say it here. What's the big deal?
I don't know of any leniency to lie to goyim, unless in a scenario where you have no other choice. Where there's no other choice because you want to fulfill Torah and they're gonna kill you or something. They're gonna take off. I mean, this was a serious scenario. I mean, he's stuck in the desert or in the wilderness. Yes, Ben.
I would say that the saying the blessing in the right place was as important to him and as precious to him as a golden dove.
So this is one of the commentaries says this, beautiful, that this to him, he had no way of explaining to them the value of the benching in the right place. So he said, I really forgot a golden dove. That to him, he felt that this was as precious as a golden dove, because for him that was true. Because for him that was so. For him that was a true statement. It wasn't a lie. He really did forget a golden dove, and that which is a very powerful statement. Do we consider benching to be as precious as a golden dove? Something you can think about. Yes, Mordechai.
Yeah, isn't there also a story about there was this woman that was making fun of her neighbor's poverty, and the poor neighbor said that she had challah, and she really did it, and a miracle occurred, and challah turned up in her house.
Yeah, there is such a story. I have to look it up, but yeah, very nice. Very nice, Mordechai Shkoyach. Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna stop here. Everyone have a wonderful day. Sei gesund.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.